Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Saving the World Together with Luke Macmichael and Martin Rezny. Today we have a special guest, Bill McClain, an intersectional futurist, writer, non-traditional strategic planning businessman, author of Strategic Planning in This Age of Disruption and The Four Horsemen Envisioning 2030. Bill, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll give you a quick second to introduce yourself to our readers, a little bit about your background and some of your ideas, and then we'll jump right into some fun topics and discussions.
Okay. Luke, thank you for inviting me, and Martin. I've been doing strategic planning. I got an MBA in strategic planning in 1981 when it was barely recognized, and have been working with strategic planning ever since then. And I'm always looking further ahead than what normal strategic planning looks. This is not a one-year plan or a two-year plan or a five-year plan. I'd like to know what it's going to look like in 2030 and 2040. To do that, we've developed some exercises that we lead clients through to try to envision the future and then plan backwards. That becomes the strategic plan. Once you can envision where it is, what's going to happen, then how to get there, planning backwards, makes a lot more sense than the traditional extrapolative, what am I good at, what are my strengths and weaknesses, and building on that. Because in this exponential time, you can't really validly look at what you've been doing right all these years. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, thank you. You're also connected with Michael Rada, who we've had as a guest a few weeks ago, and the Industry 5.0 initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about how you connected with him or how that work is going for you?
He and I have been making a podcast every Wednesday morning for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. We've got like 79 podcasts out there. And I don't know how I got involved with him. He's over in the Czech Republic. I'm over in north of New York City. So, but it's fascinating what he does, and he publishes it every week, and I just keep learning.
It's very similar to how Martin and I got involved. It's been almost 2.5-year ride. I love connecting with people who have had similar experiences with just planning and envisioning the future in different ways. So we're so excited to connect with you again. Martin, do you have any specific topics or questions for Bill that you'd like to kind of start off with? I have a few in mind as well, but
yeah, actually, Bill said something that sort of intrigued me as a Czech person. You said that you're doing strategic planning. You specifically mentioned terms like a 5-year plan. It's kind of a funny thing because very recently I have actually done a bit of a deep dive into economics, so I assume I understand now how it actually works. But until then, I actually really thought that strategic planning is this kind of thing that the centrally planned command economies like the Soviet Union and the satellites were doing, and actually the only context in which I've ever heard here the sort of 5-year plan kind of thing, it's the communist pětiletka. It's like the communist 5-year plan that sort of famously never worked out as they planned it. Yeah. So maybe my question to start with is so what is the role of strategic planning in in America in the sort of capitalist economy? That's like a market economy.
It continues to morph. It's very different than it was back in 1980. Started out in the Second World War, in the 50s and 60s. The very large companies, GE and General Motors, all did strategic plans. That was the shiny object back then. And it's morphed tremendously now. So the first step has become, rather than looking at the past and what you're good at, it has become trying to figure out what the future is. And nobody's going to be able to figure out when the next World Wide Web or but we know it's going to be there. We used to figure in every 5-year plan or every 10-year plan, you need to figure in at least one recession, right? Now you need to figure in one recession and one pandemic, because the pandemics have now been coming every 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Probably as we get, it'll probably, increase. There'll be more of them. And then things happen like Amazon publishing a book and then taking over all of distribution in the world, right? Who saw that one coming? The smartphone in 2007, who saw that coming, right? Well, I can tell you people did see it coming, because if you're a Star Trek fan, they had, right?
Tricorders or the communicators.
Right. And whenever I'm talking to customers, clients, the first thing that they always say is, nobody can see the future. Come on, get real here. Nobody knows what the future is. And to the point that there is no precision in our vision of the future. I can't tell you what the Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to be like on March 8th of 2040. I don't know. No precision. But the trends are all around us. And if you're open to those trends, and if you can connect some dots, you can see what things like healthcare are going to look like in 2030. It's all around us. In the upcoming book, we look at healthcare, we look at education. Both of those systems are so completely broken. There's going to be some very, very big changes in those two. Mobility is another one. And the one that I've really enjoyed doing and have never looked at before is food and agriculture. One of the world's biggest industries, and just the changes that are taking place right now.
Have you been following jump in there on the food and agriculture? Have you been following all the precision fermentation stuff that companies like Solar Foods in Finland are doing, where they're just starting to make food from thin air, essentially?
Yes, that's fascinating, isn't it? And lab-based meats.
Lab-based meats, yeah.
And plant-based meats, right?
I'm super excited about a world where basically anyone can live anywhere and just have a little 3D printer or replicator of some kind in their basement, powered by some kind of either solar, wind, or fusion generator of some kind, where we're all essentially off-grid as much as we need to be, and as much as we want to be, and we can kind of all be self-sufficient in our own way, right? That would be nice.
That's it, and we will get there in fits and starts. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, just like AI today. But different parts of the world are going to get versed in the new ones and so on. Yeah.
It just reminds me, have you seen I think like yesterday or last couple of days, the release of the ChatGPT 4.0? The one that
feels emotions.
Yeah, well, yeah, and talks like in real time with you, like in the movie Her, like everybody says like they did the Her thing. So what do you think about like the role? Because if I understand it correctly, I was just gonna summarize what I sort of understood the difference between like communist planning and what you're talking about. Like the commons economy planning sounds like it's like dictating, deciding what is going to happen in the future, which doesn't work. So what you're talking about is trying to anticipate the trends, like where the future is headed, if I understand that correctly.
You do.
So with like the AI, so for example, like what trends do you see with like AI in like its impact on any important systems in the future?
Well, the two answers. Impacts everything, of course. But the way that we look at it has more to do with the technology than just the technology. In fact, AI is what we call a shiny object. It by itself has no effect on society, right? It's just like a driverless car. I would love to have one. I'd take my friends and neighbors out and say, look, no steering wheel, no gas pedal, right? I would love that. But it by itself does not have any effects on society. What does is the ripple effects of the shiny object, right? So, for example, ripple effects of the driverless car, the number of traffic fatalities will go down from 40,000 a year in the US by a factor of 1,000. By a factor of 1,000. Then the ripple effects have ripple effects because I don't need so many emergency room doctors.
Yep.
I don't need so many lawyers with everybody suing each other, right? So these ripple effects of the ripple effects become then a ripple effect string. At the end of every ripple effect string is an ethics issue, a governance issue, and a stratification issue.
And what is a
So-
stratification issue?
Is the driverless car going to make it easier, better for people who are rich and poor?
Right.
And
So you mean social stratification, like in terms of like how it affects like people who are wealthy or people like different sort of wealth brackets.
Right. And I think everybody would agree that the stratification has just become such a huge problem. The rich have it and the poor do not.
Yeah.
The cities do, the rural areas do not, some countries and so on. That, and it's closely linked with the ethics discussion that we mentioned a minute ago. So this is our approach.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a very similar vision of what we'd like the future to be. Star Trek style, replicators, auto cars, lots of fun, sustainable, wasteless ways to kind of run our world. So what do you see as the major barrier, I guess, emotionally, mentally, to get enough people on board with this wasteless world movement? What's the major barrier to getting that economy of scale or getting that minimum number of people to actually make it happen? Do you see, is there any one or two problems that are kind of the key barriers we've got to solve with podcasts like this and getting the word out more?
So the major one of the first steps is awareness. Of course, that's the first step for everything. So we need to talk about it more. What you're doing with your podcast, we need to do more of that.
Right.
We need to understand. And society, if I can, it's not monolithic, but if you just bear with me, society is morphing. I think of the conversations I had in college about social responsibility. They were very short discussions. It had just started. And now we're talking about social responsibility, meaning, everything from pollution to being that the community is a stakeholder, and stuff. We continue to evolve. As we continue to evolve, as we continue to evolve, we accept more responsibility ourselves as people, and it's much more people oriented, humanity oriented. I remember sitting down with a half dozen new engineers from a company that I was a few years ago, and they were all within 1 year of graduation. They'd all been out less than a year, and we talked about social responsibility. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because me in the C-suite or running a company, we don't. And I'm an old guy, right? These young guys coming out and ladies coming out of college have such a completely different view on goals and ethics and responsibility and so on. I was absolutely shocked in a very positive way. And so the more that we see of that, the more society evolves. That's the major holdup, because nobody likes to change.
Right.
So
what do you think about all the polarization in, I guess, politics and everyone thinks that they have the one and only way to save the world? How do we kind of bring these ideas together in some way to kind of get more, I don't know, middle ground kind of thinking, less polarization?
So like your organization, Saving the World Together.
Yeah.
More conversations. We need to, someone did a study and they tried to rank countries by how good at spotting, misinformation and propaganda,
Right.
and which countries are the best. And it ain't the U.S. Right? It is the countries, some of the countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and so on. So there's something that they're teaching their kids in school that other countries are not. And so we need to find out what that is, and we need to, as the education industry continues to change over the next 5 or 10 years, that needs to be a big part of it. So we need to do it on several levels. Your podcasts are one of those levels. We have a saying that the future is arriving on the backs of language, right? We need to talk about it. And that every time you have one of these podcasts, you are helping to create the future. Right? That's a big responsibility, Luke.
It sure is. And the key for us is it has to be fun. Because people my age or people younger than me, they don't typically do anything unless it's fun. They don't want to be forced to do anything. So that was our goal with this podcast, was to try to make saving the world more fun. And I just love talking to people. I love getting out there. So if we can kind of make things like this more entertaining and get everybody to kind of do similar things, meet with your friends, talk with your friends, get some different kinds of groups or ideas together and actually do some actions on it and make it fun. Then that's when you get the synergies. That's when you get things actually taking off.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right. So let's think about where we can take this direction here, Martin. I'd love to work more with Bill and Michael Rada as well, for sure, as far as trying to kind of come up with some working groups or synergies or different things we can kind of have to connect our groups together in some way.
Well, actually, as I was listening to Bill, I'm like I said before we started recording, I actually am working right now on the charters for two of our pillars. Particularly right now, I'm in the middle of writing one for prosperity, which is actually based on I've been creating courses for financial journalism for like the last half a year, and as part of that, I've sort of deepened my understanding of economics, particularly macroeconomics or just the economic theories. And so sort of interesting to me to hear your perspective about strategic planning, because one of the things I'm sort of arriving at is like, much like you described, you sort of try to decide like what kind of future you want, and then you're reverse engineering the steps to like how to get there. And so one of the things that I was actually am currently trying to do that with pretty much exactly is in like the prosperity pillar, it's about I figure theories of value, because I think in the sort of major economic theories have very poorly developed ideas, like the mainstream economic ideas that are actually running the world right now. Very underdeveloped ideas of what value is, what's valuable, and things like what is actually like earned income, or like what kinds of things when you're doing them are actually helping anything. And so it's actually one of the things like. If maybe you'd want to then, like, once I create something, like our take on this, like if you like maybe like wanted to look at it and from your sort of future strategic planning perspective, maybe just like look at like what you think about it. Like I think that could be one of the ways in which we could further advance like the dialogue about these kinds of things.
I'd love to, Martin, and you're touching on something that I'm exploring right now. Also, that is the value, and for too long, like the term gross domestic product (GDP), that's how we rank countries, right? Mm-hmm. How advanced are you? Well, what's the GDP, right? Which is asinine. That was they started that in 1937 as a quick and dirty way of ranking, and then we started ranking, not just countries, but ranking everything by how much money do you make, and we rank people by how much money do you make. That's asinine, right? Yeah. So. What you may want to do, Martin, is there are about I don't know, I've found about a dozen, but there's probably 15 or 20 or more other ways to rank countries, and I found it by searching on alternatives to GDP. And so there are surveys that will rank how happy a country is, and they use things such as lifespan. There's fairly soft. That's the nice thing about GDP is it's hard. You can put your finger on that. You know just what that is, right? But it doesn't really tell us what we think it's telling us. So how happy? How long is the lifespan in this country? And they're just the list of other ways to measure goodness for a country. There's 100 ways. There's probably 1,000 ways.
So, Bill, do you see the world kind of eventually getting rid of GDP and moving towards some kind of genuine progress indicator or genuine prosperity indicator? Is there some way we can kind of, I guess, come towards some kind of new standard that let's rate the whole world economy and plan the whole future based on this new standard and kind of just dump this GDP? Or do you see it always being 1,000 different things? Is there any way we can kind of get a new standard?
Yeah, and I would see that in 2 steps. And the first step that we add something to GDP. So this is enhanced GDP.
Enhanced GDP. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it uses GDP, but it also throws in something about the education level, the health level, and make that list and throw that in, and that'll give people some time to get used to it before we go all the way over to getting rid of GDP.
Actually, I was just look. I just think I want to add something to that because I've spent particularly a lot of time lately listening to heterodox economists like post-Keynesians. I think they call themselves, like Steve Keen or I think Michael Hudson. It's more of also a historian of economy, or it's like a Czech example. Tomáš Sedláček wrote Economics of Good and Evil, where very focused on this sort of qualitative aspect of economics. And I think they also, one of the things they said is maybe 2 things. One of them is what to remove from GDP, not add. And that's this sort of what they would call unearned income, which is actually there is a distinction between something like purely financial gains, which are not only not creating any productive value in the economy, but are more of a cost to the businesses that are trying to do productive value. It's one of the perspectives, maybe something of that type. Or alternatively, I think Steve Keen particularly is arguing that more like the physiocrats actually got it right a little bit, meaning that if you look at the role of energy in particular, he says that workers, or labor without energy, are corpses, and capital without energy are statues. So it's that actually, if you try to do the production equation, realistically, what you see is if you're decreasing energy input to an economy, it basically correlates with the decreases in GDP. That basically the role of capital, that capital is energy. So I think I've seen a couple of these ideas that maybe it's also about everything that you said, but also about really factoring in the real role of energy and its increasing cost into the future. And at the same time, maybe looking at okay, so is every kind of profit that you can theoretically argue is profit exactly equally as productive as every other kind of profit? So what do you think about these kinds of ideas?
Well, I think you're on the right track with that. And one of the ripple effects of what you're talking about, because we're going there. What you just described, we're going there. Different countries are going at different speeds. Different countries have different impediments that will come up in that journey, but we are going there. And what we need to do is we need to try some of these on, get used to it. As you say, get rid of part of it, and it's going to keep on morphing. But at the end, I think, well, there won't be an end, but eventually there will be a more fair world, a more, if I can, loving world that is not full of hatred and jealousy and win-lose in everything that we do.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum world. I think
it's not.
That's one of the arguments I always hate when people think about win-lose situations in business and zero-sum games. It's not ever been a zero-sum world. We're always progressing together, and when we share knowledge, when we share ideas, we're adding to each other. It's a win-win. So we just need to really focus on those win-win scenarios in everything like GDP. And particularly, I think we really need to internalize the costs of things like pollution and slave labor. And those are two of the big ones in my mind that our 7 pillars really focus on trying to get specific numbers on how bad this type of pollution might be, and then kind of roll that number into the GDP.
Basically all externalities, like
all
factoring in the externalities.
Yeah, that in my mind, that's the only reason capitalism doesn't work, is it because it externalizes as much as possible onto the public, and the public pays the price of the pollution and the slave labor and all the other negative effects, negative externalities. So if we just find a way one by one to bring all these negative externalities back into the bottom line of every single business, I think capitalism can work extremely well under that kind of an envelope, along with social democracy, along with all these other, great endeavors we've got going. We can keep aspects of capitalism, for the foreseeable future, I think, and it can work well as long as it doesn't abuse the externalities.
You asked what is going to stop us from or slow us down, and one of the big things which I see changing is that I didn't used to have these thoughts. When I was raising 3 kids and climbing the corporate ladder, right? I didn't have an ounce of energy left after going to the grocery store, taking the kids to the Boy Scouts and so on. I didn't have anything left. And I think, I don't know what the percentage is, but I think that there's a majority of people, especially younger people, are like that. I think that the more that we, we're living longer, we have more time to do that. Things like guaranteed minimum income, things like, and so on. People will have more time on their hands to do the value related stuff, such as envisioning a better form of ranking countries, for example. And so I see that happening. And because of people like you didn't exist 50 years ago, or else you're on a commune someplace. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, in a gulag, possibly in a gulag in my part of the world.
Yeah, somewhere. In the gulag, right?
I always felt very kind of isolated and alone for the vast majority of like the 20 years I've enjoyed thinking about this. I always felt weird. I always felt strange. But just the last couple of years since I've started doing this podcast, I felt so much more energized to meet more people like me, out in the world, more people like Bill and Martin here, just doing very similar things. And I think there's more and more every year. I think there's at least 1% of the world now. It used to be maybe 0.1% 10 years ago. Yeah. I think we're at least up to 1% of people who care enough to spend a few hours a week, even like a minimum, say 2 to 3 hours a week, thinking about the future, planning about how to make the world better. Right.
One of the reasons why I would agree with you, and I'm optimistic about the future, is when I look back at the 60s, look at how many power centers there were. There was religion. In this country, last year was the first year that fewer than 50% of people in America were registered with an organized religion. I'm not saying religion is good or bad, but that's where we got a lot of our answers, right? Government. Before Watergate, before Vietnam, right? And so people don't look at either of those 2 power centers like they used to. Large corporations. Now there are so many small companies and so on. It used to just be mainly big companies, and you went there for 40 years and then you got your gold watch and your pension. And that's not the way it is today. And those changes are going to empower people like you, and people are looking for answers. People are looking for answers, and that's what's going to feed yours.
They want a purpose.
It's actually. You just reminded me of maybe one more issue I would like to ask you. So what do you think about, for example, like if you talk about like smaller companies as opposed to huge corporations, what do you, for example, think about the worker cooperatives, or like the whole idea of democracy in the workplace, or more democratic workplace where the workers have more of a decision-making power?
Well, that's a trend that's been going on for decades. When I first graduated and started, I went to work for a very large company, Motorola, back when they still made TV sets, and it was top down. It was everything was there's where we're going, here's how we're going to do it, and you did it. You're a robot. Now, if you have a good boss, then he'll be more of a leader and mentor and so on. But a lot of it was simply here's the manual, here's what you're supposed to do, and it's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. It's with all the small businesses where you have to create your own website, you have to do the selling, you have to do the actual manufacturing, you have to, right? And so that's empowering. That's terribly empowering to know that I can go out and start a company, make enough money to feed, to feed the family and so on. It's terribly empowering. And the more that happens, that democratization in the business world, the more your purpose and what you're trying to do, that's going to power that, it's going to feed that, fuel that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely see us as some kind of global citizens movement, I guess you can call it, where it's not bound by countries, it's not bound by any old rules. We're kind of making up the rules as we go in a new way. That's where we kind of talk about our 7 pillars of protopia on our website, savingtheworldtogether.org, that just kind of highlights this roadmap, this envisioning of what we'd like our future to look like, where everybody's safe, everybody has enough, and then has the ability to work at jobs they enjoy for more, and to enjoy all the blessings that the world has to offer for everybody without any killing or fighting or unnecessary suffering. Let's just say there's a certain amount of suffering that's necessary, but unnecessary suffering we can try to avoid.
Right. I just thought about it recently. What would the world look like if, in fact, there were no borders?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite books. I can't remember the author that had the 3 ways to save the world, and one of them was no borders. Another one was a UBI, and then the last one I think was a 15-hour work week, where everybody just had more time to essentially focus on saving the world. And they had
we're getting there.
Yeah, it was A Realist Guide to Utopia, I think it was called, or something. But anyway, yeah, it's really good ideas. I think that's definitely something that we're working towards, is trying to envision a world without borders,
Yeah,
or
although
at least the political borders.
Although I have to say, in these sort of areas, my part of the world is suffering a bit of a regress lately. I think today or yesterday, you probably haven't heard there was an assassination attempt at the prime minister of Slovakia, actually the country right next door, of course, on the border of Ukraine. And there's every chance, like it's not clear who did it at this point, but it's every chance that it might have something to do with the fact that Fico, his name was vaguely pro-Russian, or at least like very populist, and one of the things he was responsible for was reducing or stopping the military aid to Ukraine from Slovakia. So there's like this whole, I'm sure like already there's like 15 conspiracy theories, like who did it. Basically, at this point, everybody did it. I'm sure like the Russians did it, some Slovakian redneck did it, and a CIA did it somehow at the same time. So I'm going to withhold my judgment. But it's also related to the whole bigger situation, of course, of like needless suffering. Like there's not much more needless suffering as like suffering goes than like just some sort of imperial ambition of like a particular leader to just like relive the glory days of the country. Just like I think actually I've heard very recently that this like always happens when you invent a great new idea, like Nation was. And before you know it, you're dying for the nation instead of the nation doing things for you. So I guess if we're talking about like the borderless world, so Bill, what do you think, or what do you see as like trends in terms of like global governance? Like, do you see the whole thing evolving past nations to something specific, or do you think nations are here to stay for a long time still?
We are going through a tremendous shift in world order, as I'm sure you can see. Russia and China are trying to isolate themselves. They've developed international banking systems, and American companies have redefined their supply chains. We were headed towards, global economies, or at least we had taken a couple of big steps that way. Now we're taking a couple of big steps backward as the countries align themselves, either with China or Russia, or the third, countries like India and some African countries and so on are aligning themselves, and I can't see where that's going. I can't see either good or bad. But it's going to be a big change, and it's going to affect everything.
I mean, to me, it definitely seems unfortunate. It seems like a bad step backwards, I think, when we are not working together. It's particularly around things that we need to work together on, like the global environment, like, the global economy to some extent. We've got
Or energy, in particularly with Russia and Ukraine, energy and agriculture.
Yeah, energy and agriculture. We've got to have enough food to feed the world. We've got to have enough energy to give us all the amenities we've become accustomed to. But we've got to do it without destroying the world in the process, or without killing each other in the process, or causing some kind of World War III escalation. So these are all like major worldwide issues that we can really only solve if we work together as a world. So I'm definitely concerned with the isolationism and with them trying to pull back. It's almost like the last gasp of, I guess, communism, or the last gasp of the Russian oligarchy trying to hold on.
Well, actually, I think it's imperialism. It's specifically Russian imperialism. It's not Putin is not a communist, or the whole oligarchy is not really what that is about, I would say. I think it's really just like, how about making Russia great again? It's like literally the whole kind of idea that I'm sure all people from North America are very familiar with also.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, and I guess we'll see how this American election turns out. We'll see how
that's another thing.
Out. Yeah. If we can find some decent resolution to these major world events and this major polarization of, I guess, right versus wrong, good versus bad, right versus left, whatever you want to call it, and find some happy medium that everyone in the world can somehow get behind. And, let's stop killing each other. Let's make some kind of United Nations that works, to keep peace for everybody. And, maybe this is along the same lines. We've got to solve this Gaza crisis as well in some kind of happy medium way where everybody's, at least modestly satisfied with the outcome.
Well, it's actually, if I may, I said one more very relevant thing from my part of the world, because actually the modern Czech Republic actually started by the Velvet Revolution. It's like a peaceful revolution where basically just people saying no to whatever the government was doing, and the government just said, okay, so I guess we'll stop. And so that's how it ended. But also particularly there was the breaking point for the Czech people and Slovak people at that point. There was a student protest. There was a student protest that was brutally suppressed. And that was actually exactly the moment when the whole country was like, nope, I guess 48 years of that, whatever that was enough. And so now, particularly with these sort of student protests in the United States and their, basically demonization in the American media, and sort of the inability of the sort of leadership level distinguishing between pro-Hamas versus pro-Palestinian as being two different things, as in a humanitarian perspective being a completely legitimate thing to protest over by itself, as opposed to just some sort of political game. And so what I'm seeing there actually is apart from this, from the history in my part of the world being one of those kinds of events that may actually end up changing political systems, to another thing where it's sort of a sign of the people being disconnected from the leaders. And I'm personally not really sure how that's going to play out, but I'm pretty sure it's actually the exactly kind of situation where something can change, because if there's a whole population that's really wants something entirely different than what's being offered to them, so then the question is maybe a question to you, Bill, can you see some sort of a way how American politics can actually evolve into some sort of different status quo, other than some sort of a terrible devolution nonsense, new Civil War II electric boogaloo type of deal?
So that's probably the question of the century. So we all feel. I have members of my family that are strongly pro-Trump, for example. I've got someone in my family who believes in conspiracy theories. So since we no longer have the church or the faith in the government, we're looking for something. I do not think we're going to go back to war. I think that we are, a civil war. But there are some very, very strong tribal, and that's why you guys are so important. Is we have to talk about it. We have to learn. We have to teach it to our kids. We have to learn how to have a conversation. So, what do I see, Martin? I think the real answer, pardon me for wringing my hands and reminding everybody what they already know, is there are so many different trends going on, so many different trends. There's changes, so many changes in the trends, and each of these trends affects the other trends that are going on. So how I treat you, how I learn in school, how I grow my food, how I get my news from the media or Facebook or wherever I happen to get my news, all these trends are all intersecting. So the real question is, well, when we grow our food like this, then what does that do to the farmers? And farmers, big industry, and they've got money that they buy senators and congressmen with. So how does that play along with the medical, the healthcare trends that are happening, and the technology trends that are happening? So now we have ChatGPT-4, and I can date a robot, and that's good for me because I like telling them what to do, right? I can't tell right? All these changes. Can I marry a robot? Will a robot actually have rights under law?
Someday, maybe. Yeah, that's a crazy one to think about.
That's a crazy one, but that's happening, and it's also affecting all of these other trends that are happening. So what do I really see 10 years or 15 years in 2040? 2040 is an interesting year. They say that's going to be the year that they stop printing money because money's not used anymore.
Yeah.
And then 2040 is the last time that they will print driver's licenses because we'll have autonomous vehicles. So many things are happening and are intertwined and are affecting the others. So that's the challenge, and maybe that's good that we have AI here because I can't keep track of all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we have to keep track of it, and we have to look what's going to happen, what's the next step for that one, what's the next step for that one.
So maybe related to that directly. So do you think like there could be in the foreseeable future some kind of AI that can actually like do your job, the strategic planning?
Yeah, I do. But if you don't feel emotions and you're not engaged, then how good is it, right? We have lots of robot consultants that come in and go by the book, and they check this and check this and check this. That's what a robot would do, right? But the ones that say, I feel something in this room. So
Bill, do you believe in the soul? Do you believe a robot can ever be as smart or better or more emotional than a human can? Do you believe in AGI, or that it'll come in the next 20 to 100 years? So a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't think it'll ever happen. They think that it needs a soul of some kind, or it needs something. But I'm still on the fence. I'm not 100% sure which direction it'll go, and I like asking people.
Yeah. I think there are some things that that AI will never be able to do. Some human things that AI will never be able to do. So, just for an example, I remember this story about being at the beach, and the lifeguards, uh, they had a rescue organization, so that when a boat was sinking, they would climb in their boat and go out and save the people, right? So the question was, do you want a power boat, or do you want a rowboat that people can row, right? And this is to your question, Martin. And the answer was they went for the rowboat, because if I need 10% more to get over that wave, or whatever it is, to get out there faster, a man can give me that, or woman, human can give me that. A machine has got limits.
That's interesting. That's actually related to how, like, I've heard a fighter pilot explain that fighting with / against AI, and that it's about understanding its parameters. Like, it operates within a set of limits, and what the human can always do is go outside of those parameters. Is basically the explanation.
I think that's the key question of whether or not AGI will ever become, I guess, self-aware or self-learning. Is it has to be able to kind of change its own programming like a human can. It has to be able to learn from all the different inputs in the world by watching humans and say, oh, okay, now I'm going to evolve. It has to evolve itself. Whereas up till now, it's just humans kind of reprogramming it, it's the humans that are giving it more intelligence. It has to kind of somehow learn to reprogram or evolve itself somehow. And I'm not sure if it'll ever happen directly or not, but it could theoretically. And that's where you get the superhuman or super artificial intelligence. It's like godlike and cures aging and gives us, multi-planetary civilizations with trillions and trillions of.
I'm pretty sure that Luke just wants, Lieutenant Commander Data to be a real thing. So that's.
I just like thinking about it. I'm passionate about the future. It's scary, but it's also fun. Trying to envision what a post singularity society might look like. And
so when you're thinking about what a post singularity society might look at, remember the Dark Ages, and what came after the Dark Ages, the Renaissance.
Yeah, you've got to take a couple steps back to get to the future.
Well,
sometimes,
hopefully
right?
It's not going to be the other kind of post-singularity society, which is like one that's like sucked into a black hole. That would also be a post-singularity society.
Yeah, or that we don't just nuke ourselves and oblivion before we get there. In the Matrix robot wars or Skynet wars or whatever it might be, they're all real problems that need to be considered, and we need the brightest minds of the world to consider these things and come up with solutions.
Yeah, and figure out which sci-fi movie we're in. I think that's the future planning problem.
I will remind you that fear and greed sell newspapers. That's why you have the dystopian articles. That's why, right?
Yeah,
right?
You're right. Utopia is boring, right? Utopia, protopian concepts are
absolutely boring. Yeah. So that's why it's up to you guys to spread the good news, to spread the good possibilities, and to look at the future where we are much better off than we are today. Because everybody out there, the 8 billion people out there, are being fed a constant diet of fear and greed.
Yeah, that's it's like the motivator. They're trying to motivate people to keep them under control. And
it's like the movie Tomorrowland. Maybe that's the movie we're in, where they had this machine that was sending the dystopian subliminal images to everyone's brains, and that's what was making the future worse.
I just love the idea of everybody having their own holodeck, with a host of hundreds of AI friends that can kind of help them, as well as real life friends that can kind of have fun in their holodeck, and create their own Lord of the Rings adventures of any kind that they want.
Just a random example, could be anything. Lord of the Rings specifically.
Lord of the Rings is fun.
Could be really anything.
But the point is you can have all this kind of dystopian stuff in a utopian society because you've got holodecks and you've got books and you've got adventure and you've got his history that you can kind of live in and relive. And you can even maybe wipe your brain a little bit to try to live a brand new life as a brand new person in some kind of history or fantasy novel.
No, but like seriously, I think I
Adventures
think
galore.
Bill is right that there has to be a new way of spreading the good news. Although specifically telling other people the phrase "Have you heard the good news?" is already taken by different kinds of organizations. It's like of our Lord kind of
The gospel.
yeah.
The gospel of saving the world. That's what we're all about, Martin. The gospel of saving the world.
We did call this saving the world. I understand that there's this connotation, but no. But seriously, like I think that this actually has been a problem for a very long time, even in science fiction cinema or like science fiction literature. That like so, what's the most popular science fiction lately? A book / adaptation would be something like the Three-Body Problem, which is like the most dystopian, dark future, which is still cool and like interesting and clever and everything. But what's the last like utopian, like great utopian science fiction thing? It is still Star Trek, and it's still like the original Star Trek. Like there hasn't been that's everybody keeps referencing that. Like there's nothing newer. Like the newer stuff is like Black Mirror or something. Like the newer stuff is all like everything's going to end up terrible.
Well, even Star Trek had all the Borg and the Klingons and all these other races kind of constantly threatening them. So they were at war a lot, even in their kind of utopian like society. But yeah, no, there always has to be an enemy. So in my mind, the enemy is death. The enemy is always, the extinction of the human race or the extinction of society. That's our enemy. And we need to unite against that enemy, which is, the extinction of our society as we know it.
I would urge you to look further, Luke, because death is welcomed by many people.
Yeah. Well, I guess not individual death. I was thinking more the death of society or the world, but you're right. You're right. And I have to kind of phrase it a little differently.
No, some people romanticize the sort of like how they're going to live post-apocalypse, back to the roots kind of thing. Like there actually are people who are looking forward to like a Mad Max type situation.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that was one of my biggest challenges or problems with religion in general. I grew up extremely religious, and I still kind of go to church and I'm very social with it. But my biggest issue is of people not caring about saving the world because they think, Christ or someone's going to come and save us. And they're looking forward to Armageddon in some ways. And I just could not wrap my mind around that kind of mentality. It irritated me so much that, many religious people are happy and they want to bring on the end of the world so that Christ will come back sooner and they'll get to see, Christ come and save us. And I'm like, it's just not a good strategy for, future planning. What happens if he doesn't come? What happens if we,
When you talk about this protopia,
yeah,
and earlier in the program we were talking about people having enough money, enough. You used the word enough several times, which is one of my favorite words. That and envision that world. Now, what's the opposite of that? That's what we're fighting against.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is greed, fear. What's going on in Gaza?
Scarcity galore.
Well, that's the thing. It's both scarcity and like a kind of excess, because like ultimately, I think it's the inability to be content with anything, not an inability to be satisfied with any outcome. You sort of, I think, what you need to have a society that can live with enough, with ability to get more, if it sort of feels fun or whatever. But fundamentally understand and internalize the concept of it is okay to have enough, because you can't have a sustainable future in any economic scientific terms if you can't have enough, because the exponential function will get you. Just things will always then spiral out of control exponentially.
Eventually, my wife loves the concept of voluntary minimalism. And that the less you kind of have to take care of, house size wise, or just amount of things, the more time you have to kind of enjoy life and take care of, things that matter more. So you don't bog down your life with toys and excess, gadgets and gizmos aplenty. And so I think that's a movement its time has come. It's really starting to take off in the States and around the world, that we don't need a lot. We just need connection. We need companionship. I love pickleball. I don't know how many of our fans love pickleball. I love playing pickleball every day. And it's not that hard to get a good pickleball court and share it with hundreds of thousands of other people, and just really enjoy, being active, being social every
But
single day.
look, you could be spending all of your time making more money on the stock market instead. Wouldn't that be better?
I could use that money to save the world, maybe, but
But you can
there's a limit.
you could increase the number. The number could be bigger.
My number go up. The number go up feeling is always good.
Well, one of the things in the new book is a historical perspective that goes through the creation of plastic, and then after the Second War, which was also after the Great Depression, and people were so tired of saving everything and always and so on, and then all of a sudden we got plastic on the scene, and then the marketing people started selling us on a disposable society, right? You don't have to work and clean that. Just throw it away, get a new one. And so that whole disposable society, which is what I grew up in, it was more. And how do we rank the countries? Well, we do it by GDP. How do we rank our friends and siblings and neighbors? Well, it's by how much they make. And everything was more, bigger house, bigger car, fancier vacation, more. And I really see that so much evidence. I was talking about those 6 engineers out at the clients. There's so much evidence. There's so many data points around us about how the society, the way of living that we're in now, is changing from the more to enough.
I love that.
And what are the ripple effects of more people accepting the enough?
Yeah.
Enough is a great word.
I've got to put in a plug here for my my group of people I just spent all last week with, Mr. Money Mustache crowd. Have you ever heard of Mr. Money Mustache, Bill? He came on the scene about 20 years ago, and his thing was about early retirement through badacity is his word, but extreme frugalism, extreme minimalism. Basically, he retired at 30 years old with about $1 million in savings, and him and his wife had a kid from there, and basically made a blog about how he did it. And he's got over 1 million followers now. So now I go to these, yearly events and conferences with 70 other mustachians, we call ourselves, where we just basically save as much as we can, about 50 to 60% of our income for 10 to 15 years. And
yeah, but are you twirling the mustaches?
Twirl the mustache, yeah, in a fun way, yes. But yes, but our goal is really to just teach this kind of minimalism and frugality, or stoicity. Stoicity is a good word too. On making a game out of it, making life fun, and just enjoying that. And if enough people in the world were kind of to adopt this type of mindset, we could all retire at 30 and then just spend the rest of our lives doing whatever we wanted, whether it's saving the world or having family or making the world a better place one step at a time, because we'd all have, insane amounts of capital invested in robotics or solar farms or whatever it might be, providing us whatever we need. But we don't have to work anymore. We can work if we want. Work is more fun when you don't need the money, is his big concept. But it's
if you enjoy doing it, it's not work.
It's not work, exactly. And that's
enjoy something that's making you money.
Yeah. So
basically, yes, but very importantly, if you call it leisure or whatever you want to call it, it can still be insanely productive. I think that's like one of the things that I've sort of learned lately with the theories of value. It's just like leisure doesn't mean unproductive. It's like an important concept.
They're definitely my kind of people. And the more I just started going to these conferences about a year ago, and there's just so many fun connections with these types of people that are really trying to just make the world work for them. And they're getting away from some of the craziness, and they're choosing to design the life they want.
Right.
And the fact that they're able to do this and more people are doing stuff like this gives me so much hope in the future. And I love just sharing whatever kind of financial incentives or possibilities or methods that people can use to break free from the rat race and start a new kind of lifestyle.
I love it. So you got to tell everybody that you meet about that.
I do. Yeah. I've got my cards for Saving the World Together. I teach them all about the podcast as well. Who knows if any of them might be watching this, but if they are, thanks for joining us. But it's a lot of fun.
Maybe we should figure out like with the mustaches. We should have like if you also with the card you gave everybody like a novelty mustache or something. I think
they have that. Yeah, we do have the novelty mustaches at the thing. We have a picture where we all wear the little orange or blue mustaches or something, or we go like this.
And do you have females in that group?
Yeah, there's a good wide variety of people. Wide variety of people. Most of them are probably about 30 to 50, but there's a few older ones, and there's a few younger ones. So it's a good variety. But over 1 million people are followers of Mr. Money Mustache. Check it out if you haven't. Definitely a fun blog. But it's this financial independence, retire early movement is definitely a good thing in my mind to give people more freedom to explore saving the world.
Right.
So, okay. All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time for today, Bill, but thanks so much for joining us. Is there any final thoughts or comments or questions for us you'd like to throw out there?
I want you guys to talk more. Okay. You're creating the future when you do it. And thank you for having me on here. And I'd be happy to come back and chat with you all again.
Absolutely. We'd love to dig deeper on the whole planning the future. And that's what I think we'll entitle this one, Strategic Planning for the Future of Saving the World.
Something like that.
So thank you so much for having us, for being here with us today. Thanks, Martin, for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Let's save the world together. Bye-bye, everyone.